All right, so let's jump right into this Premier League match.
Okay.
Crystal Palace taking on Chelsea. This one ended in a draw 1-1.
Yeah.
And we're going to be going beyond the basic match reports and player ratings, right? You might have seen some of those already. We're going to be talking tactical nuances, hidden turning points, those little things that maybe change the flow of the game, the why behind the what. So,
yeah, this is a really intriguing one, especially for Chelsea. They were coming into this match on a 4-game winless streak, desperate for a win to, try to keep their title hopes alive, and drawing against Crystal Palace, a team that's fighting to stay out of relegation, really raises some serious questions about their ability to compete at the top this season.
Oh, for sure. So picture this Selhurst Park, Saturday, January 4th, 2025. It's freezing.
Oh, yeah.
Practically sub-zero temperatures, and the final whistle blows on that one draw.
Right.
Chelsea started strong. Really strong. It seemed like they were going to dominate from the get-go.
Yes, and the match reports kind of all highlight this early dominance, but, dominance doesn't always translate into goals, right? Their expected goals, or XG, in the first half was quite high, but they just couldn't finish.
Yeah, we're talking Pedro Neto with a couple of dangerous crosses early on. Jadon Sancho almost scoring with a volley. It felt like a Chelsea goal was inevitable.
It was, and it was... But the interesting thing is how that goal came about. It wasn't just a lucky break. It was a very carefully constructed play that highlights both individual skill and tactical awareness on the part of Chelsea.
You're talking about that Sancho dummy run.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
One that left Chris Richards completely flat-footed. I mean, that was pure genius.
Yeah.
Was that something that you think they practiced, or was it just pure instinct in the moment?
It's hard to say for sure, but, Sancho's known for his creativity on the pitch. He sees an opportunity, he takes it. And both the Goal.com article and the match report highlight this play as the key to unlocking that Crystal Palace defense. So Sancho draws the defender in with that dummy run, then threads this perfectly weighted pass to Cole Palmer, who slots it home coolly.
Ice cold finish, just like the weather.
Yeah.
The match report even said, with weather warnings promising near sub-zero temperatures, it was no surprise when an ice-cold Palmer slotted the ball past Dean Henderson to open the scoring.
Very poetic indeed. But let's go beyond the imagery here and think about the bigger picture. Chelsea scores early. They're dominating possession. You'd think they'd kind of cruise to victory, right?
Exactly. So why didn't they? I mean, they had other chances in the first half, but they didn't capitalize on them.
That's the million-dollar question. Nicholas Jackson, for example, despite receiving some really excellent service, seemed to struggle in front of goal. So this begs the question, is it a confidence issue? Is he still adapting to Chelsea's system?
And then there's the surprise inclusion of 18-year-old Joshua Chimpong in the starting lineup. That's a bold move from Enzo Maresca, especially considering Chelsea's injury woes in defense.
It is, and we know from the match report that Badiashile and Fofana are out with long-term injuries, so throwing a teenager into the heart of the defense in a must-win game, it's a gamble.
A gamble that speaks volumes, I think, about the state of Chelsea's backline, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And while Chimpong had a decent debut, this decision really kind of highlights a lack of depth in Chelsea's squad. I think, teams with deep, experienced defenses tend to concede fewer goals. That's just kind of statistically speaking.
So at halftime, Chelsea is up 1-0. But they've also missed some big opportunities. And there's this looming question about their defensive vulnerabilities.
Right.
So what happens next?
Well, the second half is where things take a rather interesting turn. Yeah, the second half saw a totally different Crystal Palace side. They came out with a lot more energy pressing, higher, winning more tackles, and all of a sudden, Chelsea's defense is not looking quite as assured.
Almost like they flipped a switch at halftime.
Yeah.
Every match report agrees. The momentum shifted drastically.
Yeah.
What do you think was the catalyst for that?
Well, there was that missed chance by Eberechi Eze early in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
The match report called it a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
It really could have changed the game had he scored there.
Yeah.
Who knows what might have happened. But even though he missed it, it seemed to give Palace this belief that they could get back into the match.
Yeah, you could almost feel the energy shift in the stadium. Imagine you're at Selhurst Park. That tension is palpable. Eze lines up that shot and bang, it hits the posts.
Oh, wow.
The whole stadium groans. But for Crystal Palace, it was almost like a spark had been ignited.
Exactly. And on the other side, Chelsea started to show signs of nerves, right? They were making uncharacteristic errors. Their passing became a little bit sloppy, and that defensive vulnerability we talked about, it really started to show.
Robert Sanchez, Chelsea's goalkeeper. I mean, he had to make a couple of really crucial saves to keep them in the game at that point. It felt like Palace was really turning up the pressure.
Yeah, Sanchez was kept busy, and then there was that controversial moment where Chelsea felt like they should have had a penalty.
Hmm.
Mitchell's challenge on NATO in the box. I mean, it was a close call.
Even Mike Dean, in his analysis for Sky Sports,
Hmm.
said it was a penalty, should have been a penalty, and that VAR should have intervened.
It was a huge moment. If that decision had gone Chelsea's way, they might have regained control and been able to see out the victory. But instead, it just added to their frustration and fueled Crystal Palace's belief even further. They knew at that point they could get something from this match.
And they did. Jean-Philippe Mateta comes off the bench and delivers a late equalizer in the 82nd minute.
Wow.
The match reports really capture the tension and the excitement as Palace pushed for that goal. What a moment for them.
It was a well-worked goal, too, and it really highlights that tactical shift from Crystal Palace in the second half. The Guardian and Sky Sports reports both point to the contributions of Ismaila Sarr and Eze in the build-up. Sarr, with that clever through-ball Ez, drawing defenders before laying it off to Mateta, who slots it home clinically.
Great finish. But you have to question Chelsea's defending on that play. Even young Achimpong, who otherwise had a pretty decent debut, was caught out of position.
You're right. And, this brings us back to Maresca's decision to start Achimpong and, just the overall kind of fragility of Chelsea's backline. And, yeah, it's understandable given their injury situation, but it's clearly a weakness that other teams are going to try to exploit.
So what did the managers have to say after the match?
Well, Oliver Glasner, Crystal Palace's manager, was understandably thrilled with the draw, especially considering how the match started. He specifically praised Daniel Munoz for his performance, saying, Daniel Munoz, especially in the second half, with his runs, I think before the goal, it was the fourth or fifth ball he was winning in the opposite half. With his passion, his intensity, and his playing, he is very important to us.
Sounds like he's really found a key player in Munoz.
He has.
What about Maresca? What was his take on the result?
Well, despite praising Achimpong's debut, Maresca couldn't hide his disappointment with the draw. He acknowledged that Chelsea created enough chances to win, but just weren't clinical enough in front of goal. And when asked about the possibility of, making some new signings, especially in defense, he was pretty coy, but did suggest that, with the injuries to Badiashile and Fofana, Chelsea might need to buy or sell some players during the January transfer window.
Sounds like he's at least considering dipping into that transfer market. So, with this draw, what does it mean for both teams in the grand scheme of the Premier League table?
Well, Chelsea remains in fourth place, but their failure to secure a win means they missed the chance to overtake Nottingham Forest. As for Crystal Palace, this draw is a huge result. It helps them move further away from the relegation zone, and it's a real testament to their resilience and their ability to adapt their tactics throughout the match.
So, looking back on this match, what do you think was the deciding factor? Was it Crystal Palace really stepping up their game in that second half, or was it more about Chelsea failing to capitalize on their early dominance?
It's a complex question. On one hand, you have to give credit to Crystal Palace for their resilience and their tactical adjustments. They could have easily folded after going a goal down, but they dug deep and found a way to get back into the match.
Yeah, but on the other hand, those missed chances for Chelsea, they were glaring. If they'd been more clinical in front of goal, they could have been 2 or even 3 goals up at halftime.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Do you think those missed chances ultimately cost them the win?
It's tough to say for sure, but it definitely played a role. And I think it's a good reminder that in football, you gotta take your chances when you get them.
Yeah.
Especially against a team like Crystal Palace, who, showed that they can be really dangerous on the counterattack.
And what about that young defender, Achimpong? He had a solid debut overall, but he was caught out of position on that equalizing goal. Do you think that's just a case of inexperience, or is it a sign of bigger defensive issues for Chelsea?
I think it's a bit of both. He's a young player making his debut in a high-pressure situation, so some mistakes are to be expected. But it also highlights that lack of depth in Chelsea's backline.
Right.
They're clearly missing Badiashile and Fofana and, their reliance on younger, less experienced players. It's a gamble.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the takeaway for Chelsea going forward?
Well, they need to find a way to be more clinical in front of goal. They're creating chances, but they're not converting them into goals. And they need to address those defensive vulnerabilities, whether that's through new signings or giving more playing time to their younger players. Something needs to change if they want to challenge for the title this season.
Okay, and what about Crystal Palace?
This draw should be a massive confidence booster for them. It shows they can compete with the top teams in the league, even when they're not playing their best football. And they showed resilience, tactical flexibility, a real fighting spirit. If they can carry that momentum forward, they should be able to steer clear of relegation.
So for those of you listening at home, what are your thoughts? Was this a case of Crystal Palace punching above their weight, Or did Chelsea let a win slip through their fingers? It's a fascinating debate, and one that I think really underscores just the unpredictable nature of the beautiful game.
Absolutely. Every match presents its own unique challenges and opportunities, and this one was no different. It was a clash of styles, a battle of wills, and ultimately a result that leaves both teams with something to ponder.
Well, there you have it. A deep dive into a match that had it all. Drama, controversy, moments of brilliance, and a final score that left us wanting more. Be sure to check out the links to all the source material in the show notes. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.